Hi, I'm Miss Chris, coming to you from my yarn fortress. So I obtained this yarn because my coworker and her sister tried to use it. It wasn't working out for them, and they went, "Here, now we're done. This is yours now." Since I do a lot of knitting and crochet. However, I do not use jumbo weight yarn, so this is jumbo weight, size 7, which is why it's gigantic. I use a much smaller. Literally, I use a 1 or 2. So the entire other end of the spectrum for most of my knitting projects. So I don't have the knitting needles to work with this. However, there is arm knitting. So I'm going to show you how to turn this large pile of yarn into an arm knit blanket. I'm going to show you the cast on, the actual process, and of knitting back and forth. So knitting and then technically tinking. If you're a knitter, it's knitting backwards. And then also the bind off. And it's a fairly quick project. It works up really fast. It's only 200 yards worth of yarn right here. So does not take a lot of time. Feels like it should, and you're just like, oh, I'm already done. So follow along. To start, I'm making a slip knot by holding the short tail of the yarn in my left hand, and then I'm reaching from behind the loop under the yarn, rotating my hand up, and then bringing it down behind the yarn and grabbing the working yarn and pulling the loop up through where my hand is. This slip knot is my first stitch. I'm going to place it around my left wrist. To cast on the first row, I'm then picking up a portion of the working yarn, twisting it into a loop, and placing it around my left wrist. I'm keeping it a little loose. That way I can get it back over my wrist again in my hand. I'm repeating this step until I have 20 loops on my left arm, including that first slip knot. For the first row, I'm grabbing a loop of the working yarn and pulling it through the first loop on my left arm. That's closest to my hand. I then remove the original loop and then put the new one around my right arm. I repeat these steps across all 20 stitches on my left arm. For row 2, I repeat the process, adding and moving the new loops to my left arm. I then continue this pattern back and forth like a typewriter for the remainder of the project. When I have about 5 loops worth of yarn left, I will start holding the new yarn together with it so that it looks like there are 3 strands being held together for 3 or 4 stitches. I then weave the tails in along the next few stitches to hide the ends. Because this yarn is so bulky, you can also get away with tying a really tight knot in the yarn and then tucking it into the weave of the fabric. You need about 3 times the width of the project worth of yarn to make 1 row. When I do not have enough green for the first half of it to make another row, I'm changing to the contrast color at the start of the next row. To do this, I'm leaving a long tail of the contrast color and following the previous steps to knit a normal row. Once I finish the project, I will weave in all of these loose ends. I'm taking my ends, putting this back in my other hand, threading them through, and then pulling it through to make that last stitch. When I run out of the contrast color and can't do a full row, I'm switching back to the green to finish the blanket. Once I have the correct number of rows, I'm binding off the live stitches so that it does not turn into a Weezer song, Undone, or the Sweater song, because it will just pull out entirely if you leave live open stitches. To do this, I'm knitting 2 stitches as normal. I then take the first stitch that I made, lifting it over the second stitch so it pulls through the first. Then I knit the next stitch on my left arm and pull the new first stitch over that one. There should not be more than 2 stitches on the right side while you're binding off because you're always removing one, knitting one, and removing one. I repeat these steps until I reach the last stitch. Once that one has been knit as well and pulled through the previous stitch, I pull the tail of the yarn through the loop and tighten it so that way it's locked in and finished. The finishing touch for the blanket is going through and weaving all of the loose ends so it looks nice and neat. There is a chance they might pop back out. You can just keep tucking them back in. Depends on how much throwing your throw blanket experience is. So 1 hour and 250 yards and 5.5 pounds later, we have a 4x4 blanket, which is perfect for like keeping your lap warm, weaseling in under during watching movies, or while reading a book, which is perfect because it is winter reading. So our winter reading contest runs January, February. You are encouraged to participate. Every branch is going to have their own basket with cool goodies and prizes. The Island Heights basket is going to have a very cool handmade blanket, so you should definitely participate. Make sure you're reading. Also, just read all the time anyway, even when it isn't one of our reading contests. And I'll see you next time.